I'll do the pledge at 6. So are we expecting most of the board, or?
I
I
don't believe so.
Okay.
And then when I'm ready, I just hit record, right, Mike?
Yeah, it will record to Ensemble, but I would hit record just to make sure, or I can do it on my end. There you go. You shouldn't have to do anything with the recording though.
For some reason, my link's not working for the live streaming.
When you click it, does it, you have to hit play?
It says live right now on my top of my screen. You're screen sharing live.
Yeah, mine says recording, but for some reason, the link I have out there is not working. Oh, there it is. Okay. Yep, it's working now. It's just not working on my phone.
Okay, I have 5:59 in probably about 30 seconds. Slide 1 of 49. Ooh, okay. I think I've seen this before. Okay, folks, I do have 6 o'clock. Does everybody else?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order of the public hearing on May 26, 2020. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. For this portion, I'm going to turn the proposed school budget presentation over to Superintendent Bowles and Assistant Superintendent for Business, Mr. Keegan.
Thank you, Mr. Farfalia. We want to make sure that we share with the public what's been proposed as a budget proposal and go through some of the details. And we plan on answering some of the questions that people have been asking in the neighborhoods or around town throughout the presentation, because we want to make sure people are informed when they're looking at their ballots that have started to come into the mail to them. This is very different. The ballots are being mailed, so we want to make sure that we are very detailed and thorough through this presentation. And I'm going to have Mr. Keegan, our business official, walk us through the numbers. So right now we're sharing a screen, and Mr. Keegan, we can get started.
Thank you. So we thought it appropriate to, although it might be obvious, to share some context for the budget that we just prepared and that we're proposing. And in doing so, we wanted to share some headlines of events that are impacting schools and school budgets. And so, as many of you know, New York faces its largest budget crisis in a decade. The World Health Organization has declared the coronavirus outbreak a pandemic. Our state controller, Tom DiNapoli, says that the current $6 billion deficit will grow to 10 to 13 billion. And New York has more coronavirus cases than any country in the world. And there's a feeling that New York State is broke, and many upstate counties are worried. We have to say, though, that we're super proud of our education institution here, our school community. On March 16th, when all those kids went home, when schools were closed, we sent kids home that week with Chromebooks and transitioned to a homebound instruction model. And here's a picture of two situations where kids are learning at home. our heart breaks for our seniors. They maybe missed the sweet spot of their senior year and are wrapping up their high school education at home, but we're really proud of our high school team that have done everything possible to make these kids stay connected and feel special. One of the things they did was post lawn signs at the homes of each of the students, acknowledging them and their graduation. Another event or series of events that have gone on, we've been feeding our community out of 10 feeding sites that started right there on March 17th with our food service organization, our bus drivers and attendants supporting that, along with teachers and teacher aides. Out every morning. The weather was awfully cold in March, but feeding families, and that effort will continue through June 25th. So for our budget presentation tonight, we're going to cover the usual topics. We're going to talk about our revenues, the biggest component of which is state aid. And I should say state aid, and the biggest component of state aid, which is foundation aid. We're going to talk about our tax levy, which actually is the biggest component, and the tax cap calculation. We'll talk about where we spend our money, our proposed expenditures, and some reductions that were unfortunately required in order to balance the budget. A few proposed additions. As usual, we'll talk about vehicle bonding proposition and the financial condition of the district via our fund balance and reserves, and then we'll conclude with the vote and election information. So we're proposing a $172.5 million budget, which is comprised mostly of, on the revenue side, of our tax levy and state aid, representing over 94% of the budget. When you look into the details line by line and compare it year to year, our general state aid overall is going up, and I've got it the next slide. I'll take you into some detail on that. The various components, pilots are payment in lieu of tax agreements. That's when a business moves into the area and instead of paying taxes, pays a schedule of income to the taxing authorities based on incentives to create jobs and whatnot. So we get some revenue there, and we're going to see an increase in that. Sales taxes, although the economy has been challenged by this most recent event, we're hoping by July 1st and through the next 12 months, things pick up and that our sales taxes will increase. We've actually, each of the last several years, our budget has been lower than our actual receipts, so this is a bit of a correction. Interest, we've done a really good job this year of managing our money, and we feel that despite the fact that interest rates are low, there's an opportunity for us to keep more of the district's money working and earning interest. Fund balance, we're going to use more fund balance this year than we've used in many years, increasing that by about $250,000. That's our savings that we're using to fund next year's budget. And I should explain that every year we put a budget together, and the line items in our budget are never perfect. We never know whether we're going to have a cold winter or what gas prices are going to be for our fueling our buses, how our health plan's going to work out, and what our benefits costs are going to be. So often at the end of every year, there's a little bit of extra money that goes into our savings account. We have a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers to take that savings, that extra money, and subsidize the subsequent year's budget with that, and we're doing that. And that's what that $4 million is that we're going to be using in the 2021 budget. We're also, because this was a tough year, we're going to use $1 million of our general reserves. We're going to use that to balance the budget this year. We've done very good with our Medicaid billing and reimbursement. Had some challenges, obviously, with the coronavirus this year, but we're optimistic that we're going to continue to improve in that area. I'll talk a little bit more about our building aid and the tax levy in subsequent slides. Taking a quick look at our state aid in total. This is the $71 million of state aid that we receive. You'll notice the first line item is foundation aid, and that aid is not increasing this year. And I'll talk more about foundation aid in the next slide. Our special ed population continues. The services we're providing them continue to increase, and we've done a really good job of getting what's called excess cost aid. Are working with our special ed department to make sure that we're stacking. That's the reporting that we do to New York State to get that additional aid, stacking those services so that we can collect that aid. And you see that's probably our largest increase in aid right there in excess cost aid. Other line items are based on our enrollment, and we have a little slightly declining enrollment, and therefore you're seeing hardware, technology, software, library, textbook go down. Transportation aid is up slightly, as is BOCES aid. We are continuing to use BOCES services. That Board of Cooperative Educational Services is an opportunity for us to collaborate with the districts in the area and make the most of purchasing services in the most cost-effective way, so we can deliver certain things that BOCES can do that we can't do. Our building aid is slightly down, but we expected that. We've been paying off our mortgage. We've been completing projects and making sure that we're ready for the next one. And that next project is the Bear Road project that's underway now. And so that building aid will increase over the next couple of years as we spend money on Bear Road. The pandemic adjustment and the federal CARES restoration, I want to talk about those for a minute. Pandemic adjustment, New York State realized they didn't have enough money to fully fund education as they wanted to, so they made it a reduction in our overall state aid. The federal government stepped up and gave us, or is planning to give us, this thing called federal CARES restoration aid. And you'll notice those dollar amounts are the same. And the goal of the federal government was to keep schools whole by making up the shortfall that the state could not provide. And so we'll see how that works out. Our UPK program that we run with Learn Should Grow in Northminster has been funded at this level for as long as I can remember, about $606,000. We spent all that money in support of UPK programming. Again, our total state aid is $71.3 million, up about 3% over this current year, mostly due to the expense-driven aids that I talked about with special ed and BOCES. So in summary on our state aid, I just want to reemphasize that we're not getting any additional foundation aid. That really hurts. As I told you already, we anticipated a drop off in building aid. We're ready for that Bear Road project and those roof projects that we have underway. And our overall aid went up about 3.06%. Foundation aid. We're still struggling with a funding shortfall. New York State has not funded foundation aid in accordance with the laws of 2007, which required the distribution of aid to school districts based on the cost of providing a sound basic public education. So this aid is still being distributed inequitably across the state. It's hurting districts like North Syracuse. North Syracuse is going to receive $13.1 million less aid in 2021 than we should be receiving under the legislation at the full phase-in level. We've received since 2007-8 $178 million less in foundation aid. It's really put us financial stress on the district. And just to put it in perspective, if North Syracuse received the same aid as one of our neighboring districts, the same percentage aid, we're receiving about 78% of that aid. This other district's receiving over 90% of their aid. They have the same wealth ratio as us, the same free and reduced lunch rate. They're basically very similar district. If we received that, we would not have had to make any cuts this year. That's how significant foundation aid, this foundation aid issue is for North Syracuse. So that kind of covers our revenues, state aid, and I want to talk about the tax cap. Before I do that, I want to show you one more picture of our teachers and our food service workers supporting that important food service program, feeding the community. The tax cap. So we're living under the tax cap. That legislation's been around for a while. This is a formula that tells school districts the maximum amount that they can raise the local taxes without a supermajority. That's where you'd get 60% of the voters voting yes. Obviously, with the economy the way it is and some of the challenges we experience, despite our financial challenges, our board, our management decided to ask the community to stay within the tax cap. And so we're proposing a tax levy of $92.5 million, which is a $2.3 million increase. It's at the tax cap. We're using the state mandated formula. It's an increase of 2.59%. And what does that mean for the average taxpayer? That's an increase of $61 on a $100,000 home for 4-star. Regardless of what town someone lives in, Cicero, Clay, or Salina, if they have a home worth $100,000, regardless of their assessed value, I just want to remind everybody that the town of Clay does not use full value assessments. But regardless of the town you live in, and regardless of your assessed value, a full value home of $100,000 will pay approximately $2,421 in taxes, again, for 4-star. $61 a year, or $505.08 per month. So let's look at how we compare to other districts in our area. There are 23 component districts in our BOCES, and North Syracuse is right smack in the middle. We're the median tax rate. And so based on this data, it shows that half the district's tax rates are lower than ours, and half the district's tax rates are higher than ours. This doesn't say that our taxes are too high or too low. It just shows where we fit in relative to the other districts. On the expenditure side, I want to, before we dive into the detailed expenditures, I want to just put some context to where we fit in again with all those other districts. Our spending is ranked 18th amongst 23 districts. So 17 districts in Central New York spend more per pupil than we do, again, out of the 23 component districts. We're ranked 633rd out of 677 districts in the state. So our spending per pupil is relatively low. And that speaks to the foundation aid issue we just talked about, and also to the economies of scale and the fact that North Syracuse is a good steward of the community's money in terms of trying to be very efficient while delivering a highly effective education to our students. So our expenditures equal our revenues. We have a balanced budget, $172.5 million budget. Our expenditures are mostly people. We're a people-based business. And we spend money on the most important thing we do, which is putting an adult in front of a student so that they can learn. We also spend money on debt service. That's our mortgage payments. We spend a lot of money with BOCES, providing BOCES programming for our students, our special ed services, our career technical education, and we spend a lot of money on our technology infrastructure, which obviously has served us well during this coronavirus and the need to have homebound instruction. Looking at our expenditures year over year, our salaries overall are going to go up about 1.53%. And that's because we are honoring our contracts and giving raises as we should. And unfortunately, we're making some staffing reductions in order to balance the budget. Benefits are going up about 4.72%. Again, we've had increases in healthcare and pension costs along with everybody else, but it's somewhat offset by the reduction in staffing. Overall, our budget is up $5.8 million, or about 3.48%. I'm going to go through each of the areas where we had to make reductions and take a look at our costs. And the first area is elementary education. We looked at our elementary enrollment. And if you follow along here, our elementary enrollment declined by about 7.7% since 2015-16. But our elementary staffing increased by about 7.5%. We were doing the best we can to provide additional resources to our students to help with their education. But due to this difficult budget time, we're making reductions of about 7 elementary teachers in order to save money in our budget. But I want to assure you that our class sizes will remain well below guidelines and contractual requirements. and the projected student-teacher ratios are conducive to meeting the needs of both students and district staff. Many of you know that we have been piloting a new middle school schedule this year, which allowed us to offer a broader offering of academic opportunities to our middle school students. However, the additional courses offered were not required by New York State, and the cost of the program exceeded our financial capacity. So we're making reductions. We're going to cut 9 middle school positions that were created to facilitate this new schedule. And there's 2 things I want to leave you with on this slide. Number 1, the student-teacher contact time is not being reduced. This is simply a scheduling change. So students are still going to be with their teachers for the same amount of time that they would otherwise have been. We're also keeping mandated counselors and ENL, English as a new language, positions that we hired in the past year. They're going to remain so that we can stay in compliance with those regulations. At the secondary level, junior high and high school, we've worked hard to expand our offerings, and we're going to continue to do some work to make sure that the kids have the best opportunities possible. But due to declining enrollment, we're going to, over the last 4 years, we're going to eliminate 7.65 positions. Again, student-teacher ratios, class sizes, and class loads are all going to remain within guidelines and contractual requirements. We've had some teachers on special assignment that have done incredible work supporting our teachers, coaching our teachers to help them as they address the needs of our students. But due to the budget deficit, we're making some reductions in teachers on special assignments, specifically co-teaching that was dealing with our special education co-teaching model, and 2 of our literacy coaches. So we're making those reductions in teachers on special assignments. We're also going back and looking at our special education model. And over the last 4 years, the district has significantly increased staffing associated with special education programming, despite a very nominal increase in our special education population. So the district's increased the number of special education teachers by 21 teachers and the number of teaching assistants by 27. That's an increase of 29 and 30% respectively over the last 4 years. Again, despite a very nominal increase in our special ed population. So in order to improve the economic efficiency of delivering special education services while still meeting the needs of students as documented in their IEPs, we're reducing 10 teaching assistants and 4 consultant teachers. And I'm going to cover this point a little bit later, but it's important to note also that we happen to have retirements that will offset those teaching assistant reductions. So in this case, no teaching assistant will be losing a job. We have a very important process, something we're extremely proud of here at North Syracuse called our PAR panel. These are consultant teachers that work with our newest teachers, our non-tenured teachers. And they have done amazing work to ensure that the growth, the personal and professional growth of our newest teachers. But due to the hiring that we're not doing with the declining enrollment, and due to the reductions, we're going to be eliminating 5 consultant teachers. We have 9 of them on staff. And so the remaining 4 CTs will be able to meet the needs of our newest teachers going forward. Looking at our administration, during the last fiscal crisis, we made a lot of cuts to administrative positions. But as we came away from the 2008-2009 crisis, we were very much committed to adding resources that were going to be directly involved in the instruction of our students. So we tried not to make additions to administration. We've done a really good job of that. On the operations side, we unfortunately still lack a director of security, a director of technology, and we don't have a grounds crew leader. We also, I'm going to show you a slide in a moment that talks about our administrative ratio, something we look closely at. We don't want to have too many people in the back office. We want to have as many of our resources to be student focused. We unfortunately have had to make some reductions. We We are not going to hire a math director. We're consolidating some director positions to cover that responsibility. That position was previously approved by the board, but we're going to put that on hold in light of the economic situation. We're also going to eliminate a position. We have an IT systems administrator that's going to be retiring, and we're not going to fill that position. So let's talk about those administrative ratios, and bear with me as I walk you through this very busy chart. So we looked at the 7 districts in central New York, the large suburban districts, North Syracuse being one of them. And we looked at the ratio of students to administrators. So on the left, you have the left axis, you have the enrollment, that's the bars, that tells you how big the school district is. North Syracuse is the largest suburban district with 8,383 students. On the right, the dots are marked off, and those are the numbers that are attached to each bar, and that tells you the number of administrators. So at North Syracuse, we have a administrator, our student to administrator ratio of 278.5 to 1. Our largest neighbor has a ratio of 175.5 to 1, less than 100 less students per administrator. They have 39.5 administrators to our 30 administrators. So you get the idea here. We are, as mentioned, we're in a disadvantageous situation, but one that we are committed to maintaining through this difficult time. Based on the evidence of this chart, we show that the district is light on administration. Moving on to 2 areas that are extremely important, and probably the most important thing we're going to deal with as we come back to school in September, and that's the social and emotional needs of our students. We'll be adding at the high school a administrative assistant for student services, again, trying to meet the needs of the students in that building. We're going to be providing an additional social worker. We have 2 elementary schools that share resources, counselor, social worker resources, and we need to make sure there's a full-time dedicated person in each of those buildings. That's Cicero L and Allen Road. We have 2 psychologist interns joining us next year. We continue our partnership with Liberty Resources and with Contact, and we think that the continuing shoring up these resources, we've added, I think, 4 counselors in the last year. And in addition, we'll make these changes that I've just described. We believe that this allows our ADAPEP counselors to function at a higher level. And again, if kids aren't in the right place socially and emotionally, they're not ready to learn. And we think, particularly given what's gone on with the coronavirus, we need to make this our #1 priority coming back to school next year. We also want to make sure that our kids have opportunities. And we pride ourselves in North Syracuse as having one of the best offerings of electives for our high school students, and starting even in the junior high, so that they can, when they go to college, they've had exposure to a broad range of electives that help them choose the right major for them and give them the best chance of success in careers and college after graduation. And so we're adding a live event production course. We've got an extremely talented faculty member at the junior high that will be working at the high school, helping our folks develop the skills for live event production, something that we do an amazing job at our junior high school auditorium, which is one of the larger auditoriums in Onondaga County that has state-of-the-art technology, and many of our kids have learned those skills, and we want to take that to the next level and provide more opportunities for more kids. We also have some new courses under development in technology, such as drones. Drone technology, as we all know, has permeated the U.S. economy and the world economy. Many colleges are offering, including OCC, are offering courses in that. We want to make sure that our kids have that exposure. We have a career center at the high school that is staffed with a full-time individual that works closely with the kids to give them the opportunities for internships. And we continue to foster opportunities for students through our BOCES programs. 47 of our students last year earned CTE endorsements on their high school diplomas. And just to give you a perspective on some of the career and technical opportunities that our kids can take advantage of at BOCES, here are some of the various offerings that are available to them. So I want to just quickly touch on some of the additions that I didn't touch on. I've already talked about the administrative assistant for student services at the high school. We're going to add an advisor for mastermind competition. That's another opportunity for kids to demonstrate their skills. Unified bowling, you know, we did unified basketball last year for our special needs students. This is unified bowling. Many of the other districts do that. Again, it expands those opportunities for special needs students. Just like we made cuts due to enrollment declining, we actually have a bubble at 7th grade at Gillette Road. We're going to be adding some additional teachers to support our students at Gillette Road. Our ENL population continues to increase, and we're adding a 0.3 ENL teacher at Gillette Road. I talked about the psychologist interns. We're also adding an RTI ELA coordinator to work with us district-wide. And that's another critical position to improve the curriculum and performance of our instruction in ELA and working with our students at RTI. Social workers, I talked to you about the Allen Road Cicero L situation. And I want to just remind everybody that due to the Bear Road construction, we're going to be shifting our 3rd and 4th graders from Bear Road to Lakeshore. We want to make sure that they're properly supported up at Lakeshore. And so we've got a half-time social worker up there. We're going to have a full-time security guard. We're going to shore up the nursing resources there and across the district with another full-time nurse. And we're going to add a half-time teacher's aide. So some significant additions to support our students next year. And I want to summarize, how that all nets out to the 40 position reduction that we're going to have next year. I took you through each of the lines on this chart represents one of the slides that I took you through. And at the end of the day, we're cutting over 40 positions to make this budget balance. Just again, a little diversion here to show how much we appreciate our teachers, and maybe more importantly, how much our families and our students appreciate their teachers. Our teachers have had to really work hard to stay connected with their kids in the home while the kids are home. And our teachers have really gone above and beyond to do that. And these were just some things some families sent in to show their appreciation for our teachers. Once again, we're going to keep our fleet current. So one of our goals is not to have too many buses over 10 years old. As everybody knows, you drive a vehicle around central New York for 10 years and there's not much left because of the rust and wear and tear on the roads. We have a suburban district. We do a lot of stopping and going, and that's tough on transmissions and engines. And so we're following a model that has been in place here at North Syracuse, that we try to replace enough buses that we can keep our fleet reasonably current and able to pass DOT inspection, and that means safety and that means efficiency. So we're going to purchase gasoline-powered buses again this year. This will be our 2nd year of doing that, and we're really excited about that because those buses are a little cheaper to maintain, and they also don't put out that exhaust. You might have been behind some of our buses where you've seen that big puff of black smoke. We get complaints about that from time to time. It's really tough to keep a diesel bus with the emission standards operating and not have it regen like that while you're out on the route. So we're buying 10 65 passenger buses, 2 42 passenger buses for our special needs population, 6 trucks and vans to replace some 15-year-old vehicles in our M&O department. One of the things we want to do, and that includes a mower, one of the things we're realizing is that we need to leverage our people better. If we're going to continue to focus resources on instruction, we need to make sure we give our back office folks the best piece of equipment possible. So when we talk about buying a mower, we need a mower that the blade turns faster, the mower moves faster, and that the deck is wider. And the same thing with our trucks and other vehicles. We need to make sure we leverage our human resources as best as we possibly can. We're also going to buy a tow truck to replace our 30-year-old cable tow truck. The estimated cost of this is about $2.1 million of all these vehicles. Now, rest assured, I want to remind people, our transportation aid rate is 78.5%. So we get aid on these vehicles, and the tax impact after transportation aid, but before STAR, is about $2.38 for a $100,000 house. Again, before STAR. And this is what it's all about: delivering kids to school on time, safely and in a good frame of mind. And remember, we triple trip our kids. That means our buses go out 3 times a day. They pick up the high school and the junior high, they pick up the middle school kids, and then they cover our 6 elementary schools. And so we really pride ourselves on delivering our kids to school ready to learn. So now I have to share with you something that's, again, a little on the heavy side. I talked about our state aid. Our state aid that's in this budget is based on the final state aid that our legislature approved. And unfortunately, we were told recently by the governor that they're going to look at our state aid every quarter, and they're potentially going to adjust it downward based on the revenues that the state receives. So if we don't pull out of this economy, this downturn that we're in, we're going to face some additional cuts. And we had the idea that we would share with the community what those cuts might look like, at least in terms of dollar magnitude. So if we get a 1% cut, and oh, by the way, the governor said the cuts could be up to 20%. I can't even imagine what a 20% cut would look like. I don't think school would look like it looks today if we got a 20% cut, but 1% is about $706,000. That's basically almost another 10 teachers. If we have a 5% cut, that's $3.5 million. But that's some pretty deep cutting on top of the $4 million we cut to balance the budget and cut those 40 positions we talked about. So we felt like it would be disingenuous to conclude this budget presentation without saying that we're at risk of further expenditure reductions based on the state economy. And we're going to be watching that closely. We're going to be communicating with the community as we hear more, and we're going to be hoping that the federal government comes through and does what they did with the CARES restoration aid. And whatever the state can't afford to pay schools, we're hoping the federal government will come forward and pay. So I'd like to shift now to talk a little bit about the district's financial position. We've worked extremely hard since 2008, 2009 to shore up the district's finances. And what I mean by that, we were a district in fiscal distress. We were rated by the state as a district that did not have a good financial condition. We prided ourselves on getting off that list and making sure we have a savings account so that when the next downturn happened, which, oh, by the way, here it is, we would have a savings account to fall back on. And so we've appropriated, as I indicated earlier, $4 million of our fund balance in order to deal with the needs of the budget this year. We're also, I want to point out that second line item in there, the refund from New York State due to those final cost report penalties. They went into our fund balance, but we appropriated those to deal with the additional local share of the Bear Road project so that we wouldn't have to completely rely on the taxpayers to cover that cost. And that's helping us with that project. So right now we're in decent shape. We're hoping that the state's financial situation and the local economy turn around, and that we don't have to completely spend down our fund balance and end up in a situation where a district under fiscal stress again. We also have these things called reserves. We have a tax certiary reserve. As many of you go through annually, you look at your assessment of your home, which the district has nothing to do with. But if you get your assessment changed, you pay less taxes. Well, what happens is if the tax bills have already been issued, we end up having to cover that shortfall. And so we have a reserve set up, and we literally work with our attorneys to look at all the tax matters that are out there, and they help us develop a reserve to cover all of the different potential contesting of past taxes and assessed through the assessment process. We have a workman's compensation reserve. Unfortunately, if workers get hurt, we do everything possible to keep people safe, but at 1,400 employees covering 11 campuses, we have accidents. And so we make sure we have a reserve to cover the liabilities associated with that. We have a general reserve. We're using that reserve this year to shore up the budget and to balance the budget. And so that's going to go from $1 million down to about $25,000. We have a debt service reserve. So every time we issue debt and we issue it at favorable interest rates, we're able to get a premium when we sell those bonds. We take that premium, we put it in the bank, and we use that to offset future debt service costs in the district. And we have a small capital reserve remaining. And we're trying to earmark this $500,000 to cover the next time we have to replace the turf up at the high school. So that kind of gives you a sense between our fund balance and our reserves of how the district has been managing its balance sheet, our savings accounts, so that we can navigate through these troubled waters. So in summary, the district remains underfunded with foundation aid. The single biggest problem we face is the fact that we're not getting our fair share of state aid. And it's important that the community know that. We continuously remind our legislators of that, and it's just not fair, and we need to get that situation corrected. Our tax levy is within the tax cap. We are not asking the taxpayers to pay us any more than that state mandated formula requires. It's an increase of 2.59%, and it requires a simple majority, one more yes vote than no vote. And unfortunately, our state aid just wasn't sufficient. It wasn't what we expected. No increase in foundation aid. I never would have guessed that would happen. And as a result, we've had to cut 40 positions this year. But thankfully, due to retirements and leaves of absence that are being taken, only 3 people will be laid off, and 7 people will go from full-time to part-time, resulting in only 3 of those losing benefits. Our budget is a balanced budget, includes revenues of $172.5 million, about a 3.48% increase. We are using $4 million of our fund balance, and we're using $1 million of our reserves to balance that budget. So we're hoping for better times ahead. Despite the proposed cuts, we're still able to provide our students with opportunities, as evidenced by some of the things we talked about with social emotional services we're providing our students, as well as the opportunities we're providing them at the secondary level. Our class sizes remain reasonable, and we feel really good about that. We're hopeful that additional federal aid will come through, as I mentioned earlier, to offset any future expenditure cuts that happen as a result of the state not collecting the revenues that they expected when they promised us the aid this year. So there's a lot there, but I want to conclude with the vote and election information. We are doing something that has been a Herculean effort. We've mailed out 40,500 ballots. Our district clerk, Connie Gibson, and a team of people here at the district office have been working extremely hard to provide those ballots to all qualified voters. But what's absolutely critical is that the voters read the instructions and get the ballots back to the district office by 5 p.m. on June 9th. The candidates are listed on the ballot alphabetically, and the information about the candidates, their bios, is available on our website. The budget dispatch version was mailed out last week to our voters. Many of them might have gotten it today, but we'll be getting it. The public hearing obviously is taking place right now. I want to show you a document. This is called the budget notice. We send this out every year. This year it was stuffed in with the ballot envelope. And so all this simply does, it says, here's the adopted budget from 2019-20. That's the first column. Here's the proposed budget. It tells you the difference. And it tells you the difference, I should say, the 3.48% that we talked about. It also says that if we have to go to contingency, and I want to explain what that is. If the voters vote down the budget twice, the district goes to contingency. And what that means is that we don't get a tax levy increase. And if we don't get a tax levy increase, we have to cut out $2.3 million of the budget. And so we'd have to go and roll up our sleeves and go back into the entire budget and make cuts to the administrative component, the program component, and the capital component of the budget, equaling $2.3 million. I want to point out one number here on this budget notice. This is the savings. This is the savings that every Star home realizes. It's the $726 that come off Remember, the first $30,000 of your assessment is covered by STAR. And so that simply takes that $30,000, applies the tax rate, and shows you the $726 of STAR savings that you realize. That's just important to note. And again, we remind people on the budget notice, please get those ballots completed, follow the directions, and get them back to us by June 9th. The ballot instructions I've shown here, but they're very clear. Mark the box, no extraneous marks on the ballot. Mark yes or no. I show a sample ballot here with those instructions. Proposition 1, which is our budget. Proposition 2, which is our vehicle bonding proposition. The folks in Salina will receive a budget that shows them the proposition, but they will get a separate ballot. They'll get a separate ballot in the mail with a separate envelope that allows them to vote on the Salina budget. I've got some information here about that Salina library budget. So the ballot that everybody's going to fill out for the school is going to be Proposition 1, yes or no about the budget. Proposition 2, yes or no about the vehicles. And then folks in Salina are going to get information about the Salina budget on the ballot, but they're going to get a separate ballot that's going to come to them this week in the mail, and they're going to be able to vote on the Salina library budget. And then folks get to pick 3 of the board candidates here, or write-in candidates, but they have to choose just 3 candidates. And the bios of the people that are running are on our website under our budget information. The envelope, that ballot envelope, you must fill it out. Please make sure that you complete the ballot envelope in all the blank places, and please date and sign the ballot. That's kind of your certification of that ballot. And we are going to be very rigorous about having control over those ballots. And recording of those ballots. Our district treasurer uses a system called the Bold Election System. So when those ballots come in, they will go into this computer system. It'll make sure that they're a valid voter, that they can't vote twice. If they get a ballot from their neighbor and fill it out, that's not going to work. It's going to only allow us to take 1 vote per registered voter, per authorized voter. And we just want to make sure that you complete this information properly so that your vote counts. And our attorneys will be working with us to oversee the counting of the ballots. So this will be a very disciplined process that'll be very controlled. So there'll be a lot of integrity to it, so that everybody can rest assured that the results will be accurate. We won't start counting those ballots till the 10th. So it's going to take us a couple days to go through them. I want to remind you, we sent out 40,500 ballots.
Don, can we go back to that envelope that you just had?
Yes.
I just wanted to reiterate, I've had a lot of phone calls and a lot of emails. Right where it says North Syracuse Central School District election of, the date of June 9th, 2020 goes in there. And over at the post office part, all they're going to put in there is the town that they live in.
Okay. All right, good. Thank you for that clarification. That's great. Thank you, Connie. So, as you know, the way the law works is if you have a library within your school system, the library gets to include their proposition on our ballots or part of our process as it's being done this year. So normally when we went to the voting booth, we would see the Salina, if you live in the town of Salina, you'd see the Salina that proposition on there. And the school district has nothing to do with the library, but we're obligated to allow them to participate in our vote and election process. So having said that, the Salina library increases a 2.8% increase, only about $12,800. It's a 4-cent increase on a home of $100,000 in the town of Salina. And if you have any questions on those, don't hesitate to contact the Salina library and they can answer questions. If you have any questions about this budget presentation, I want to tell you it's on our website. You can click through the slides again. Do not hesitate to send an email or call myself, Dan Bowles, our superintendent, or if you have a question about the voting or election process, don't hesitate to call Connie Gibson, and her information is here as well. I want to leave you with a really cute picture again. I think, despite that we've been socially distant from our kids, I think there have been some really unique connections made with our teachers and our kids. And this is just one example of kids just showing their appreciation for their teachers. And this was a drawing that one of our kids did and sent in, and I think it really speaks to how we feel here at the North Syracuse School District. Despite this difficult economy, despite the coronavirus, we remain very hopeful for our students and hopeful for our families. And we believe that this budget will provide great opportunities for our kids in the 2021 school year. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And as Mr. Keegan said, there be on the ballot information you received, there is an area where you vote for 3 school board members, 3 candidates running for school board, as well as there is spaces for write-ins if you so desire. I'd like to read the names off of the 6 people who we have running for school board. They are listed, as Mr. Keegan said, in alphabetical order. They are Michael D'Onofrio, Terry Kruger, Joshua Ludden, Aaron McDonald, Michael Maurizio, and Xavier Moody Wazaluk. So you will see that in your information. And I thank you. And thank you for all that work, Mr. Keegan, Mr. Bowles, and Dr. Chris. Thank you. We're adjourned. I formally adjourned the meeting. Thank you.